What if I told you that Hamilton's poor performance in Abu Dhabi was neither his fault, nor the weather, nor a bad strategy? What if even Charles Leclerc was shocked to discover the real reason, one that made him fear for his own safety all year? Everyone was talking about Lewis Hamilton's drop in performance since he joined Ferrari. The networks called him out of shape, some media called him a signing error, and even his abilities began to be questioned in this new stage. But what no one knew, not even within the team itself, was that the real problem was much more serious. It wasn't Lewis, it was the car. During qualifying for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the 7-time world champion was again left out in Q1. It was the 4th time in a row. Almost no one was surprised. It seemed like another great performance in a season to be forgotten. But that elimination was the breaking point. Hamilton, frustrated, reported on the radio that he felt the car giving way in turn 9. Something bent at the front and the rear went, he said in a tone between bewilderment and disbelief. At the time, the comment was received as just another excuse. But then, when engineers began reviewing the telemetry, the truth came to light. What they saw was not only unusual, it was terrifying. The sensors showed an abnormal pattern, a flexing of the chassis on the front axle completely outside the expected parameters. The structure of the SF25 was literally collapsing under lateral aerodynamic loads, in a critical curve at very high speeds. This is not just a technical detail. It means the car was operating outside of its structural design. In other words, every time Hamilton took that corner hard, the car deformed, the downforce became unbalanced, and the rear end became uncontrollable. It's as if the car breathes, and then fails. And he did it in an unpredictable way. Not even the best driver in the world can compete with a chassis that decides for itself when to hold and when to give way. The failure was so subtle that it went unnoticed during previous training sessions. It did not appear in the simulators, it was not visible to the mechanics with the naked eye. But it was there, latent like a time bomb. And it exploded just when it shouldn't have. This discovery marked a turning point not only in the evaluation of the car, but in the perception of Hamilton's entire year. 4 months, attempts had been made to adjust the SF25 setup to adapt it to Lewis's driving style. Changes in suspensions, brake balances, engine maps. But none of them resolved the lack of trust to the limit. How to do it if the problem was not with the adjustments, but with the skeleton of the car itself? The official internal explanation that circulated in the paddock spoke of a weakness in the connection area between the monocoque and the front axle, which manifested itself only under prolonged lateral G-forces. This caused the chassis to lose its structural rigidity in situations that, in theory, it should withstand without problems. That is to say, Ferrari designed a car that could not resist its own internal forces when pushed to the extreme. A basic error. An inexcusable failure at this level. These types of failures are not only dangerous, they are a betrayal of the pilot's trust. Because F1 above performance requires absolute certainty that the car is not going to physically fail you, that you can push it to the limit and it will respond. When that breaks, everything breaks. And that's exactly what happened to Hamilton. This wasn't just another bad weekend for Ferrari. It was a warning that something in the team's technical structure is deeply broken. And that, as long as it is not faced honestly, it will continue to devour drivers, no matter how many championships they have won. When Charles Leclerc received detailed information about the structural failure in Hamilton's SF25, his reaction was instantaneous, but not outrageous. He didn't shout, he didn't make hasty public statements. But those close to him noticed the change. His face tightened, his body language closed off. What he experienced wasn't surprise. It was a brutal mix of validation, suppressed rage, and retroactive fear. Leclerc had felt something throughout the season that he could not explain with data. On certain circuits, on certain corners, the car simply did not respond as it should. There were turns where I had to let go early, where I felt strange vibrations, or where the rear left without logic. In technical meetings, these sensations were often dismissed by the engineers as effects of the setup or driving style. They told him he was sensitive, that perhaps he was being too aggressive in his support. Now, with the data from Hamilton's car on the table, everything made sense. Discovering that the SF25 had a structural failure was not just confirming a suspicion. It was the realization that he had been racing at more than 300 kilometers per hour in a car that could physically fail at any moment. It wasn't just that the car was not competitive. It was potentially unsafe. That this failure manifested itself in the middle of qualifying, under maximum demands, showed that he was also close to the limit, but not the sport's limit, but the limit of the accident. From an emotional point of view, this discovery unleashes an inner storm that is difficult to handle for any driver, but especially for Leclerc. Because the Monegasque is not just a competitor, he is a driver who carries the emotional weight of Ferrari's legacy. He has been, for years, the face of the project. The young man who was going to return the Scuderia to the top. But year after year, that narrative falls apart. And now, it is not because of strategy errors, nor because of bad tire decisions. It is due to a failure in the heart of the car. On a personal level, this revelation also triggers a deeper concern. What if the team wasn't completely transparent with him? What if something was known before and it was minimized to avoid the media crisis? What if, in order to maintain institutional calm, they unnecessarily exposed him to a risk from which he could have been protected? Leclerc, who has always been characterized by his honesty, his tireless work ethic, and his loyalty to the team, begins to face an inevitable internal dilemma. Should you continue to trust Ferrari? Should he continue to risk his body, his career, and his life for a structure that has not been able or willing to guarantee him even a structurally sound car? Charles Leclerc has already begun to show signs of emotional wear and tear. Hamilton, a newcomer, has already experienced one of the worst qualifying sequences of his career. How long will it be before they both start to question whether Ferrari is really a place where they can fight for a championship without compromising their integrity? Furthermore, this also sends a dangerous message to young engineers, sponsors, and above all, fans. Because Ferrari is not just a brand. It is an identity. It is a promise of excellence. And when that promise is broken, a new front wing or a wind tunnel upgrade isn't enough. A deep, structural, cultural change is needed. Ferrari must face an internal reform that it cannot continue to postpone. It is not enough to redesign the car for 2026. You must redesign the way the project is managed, how critical decisions are made, how errors are addressed, and how trust is rebuilt with its drivers. If they don't, they will remain stuck in a loop of seasonal hope, systematic disappointment, and empty promises. And that loop has already destroyed more than one generation of talent. Will this be the next one? The 2025 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix will go down in history not for its overtaking, nor for battles on the track, but for what it revealed outside the stopwatches. It was the moment when Ferrari was exposed, not for its performance but for its structural fragility. And it was also the moment when Charles Leclerc faced, perhaps for the first time so starkly, the possibility that his loyalty was misinvested. Because what happened with Hamilton was not a simple technical error. It was a breach of trust. It was the discovery that all season long, they weren't fighting with a dull sword, but with one that could break in their hands in the middle of combat. And that truth is infinitely more painful. For Charles Leclerc, this event is a turning point. Not one that is marked with an immediate decision, but with a deep internal transformation. You can no longer look at your car with the same eyes. You can no longer climb into the cockpit of the SF25 without wondering what else could go wrong, what other invisible errors could be hidden under the red paint. And above all, what else is being hidden from him? That doubt, once installed, grows. In every braking, in every fast corner, in every meeting with the engineers. Because Formula One is a sport of extreme trust. Between driver and team, between data and decisions, between the physical limit and human judgment. When that trust is eroded, there is no turning back without a total rebuild. Ferrari, historically, has lived between glory and tragedy. It is a team that has reached the sky with names like Schumacher, but that has also dragged talents into the abyss of institutional frustration. And the question that many are asking now is whether Charles Leclerc is about to follow that second path. Because talent is not enough, nor is it enough with the love of colors. Leclerc has already shown that he can win, that he can come back, that he can fight with the best. But no talent, no matter how pure, can flourish in an environment where the very structure of the project is unstable. This season finale leaves Ferrari in the mirror, and what he sees is not encouraging. It is the reflection of a team that remains trapped between its glorious past and a present that is not fully consolidated. And its pilots, it is slowly pushing them towards a crossroads. Charles Leclerc can stay. You can continue fighting. But if he does, it will be from a new position. Not that of the unconditional believer, but that of the skeptical warrior. Because now he knows the truth, that even at Ferrari the myth can be broken. And when it breaks, it does so silently, devastatingly, and perhaps irreparably. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.